This is my bet. More importantly, this is every single #1 issue from the New 52 launch back in September of 2011. This was the beginning of a new era for DC Comics. You have new characters, new status quos, new genres, new continuity, new everything. And now, since we're basically going through this again with Rebirth, I figured now would be a good time to take a look back at the 52 launch titles that really got us started on this crazy journey. And just as how this was a change for DC, this lineup would change pretty rapidly too. A lot of these books wound up getting canceled, usually due to low sales, sometimes due to the story ending, and sometimes due to creative struggles behind the scenes. First, they canceled Blackhawks, then Hawk and Dove, then Men of War, Mr. Terrific, OMAC, and finally, Static Shock. These titles didn't make it past their 8th issue. And over time, a lot more of these books started to get canceled as well for the reasons I mentioned earlier. Behind the scenes struggles, storylines ending, and a lot of them just didn't really have a foothold in the marketplace anymore. Some were even getting canceled due to events, like Nightwing getting canceled after Forever Evil, or Batwoman getting canceled after Convergence. In the end, only 12 of the original 52 launch books made it to their 52nd and final issue. And today, we're going to take a look back at those surviving launch titles and see just how different they wound up being from when they launched. These, ladies and gentlemen, are the survivors, the books that made it from the launch of the New 52 all the way to last week's release of Rebirth. Now let's get the top books out of the way first. I'm talking about Batman and Justice League. I should note that none of the creative teams from the launch of these books wrote or illustrated the last issue. But that said, both Batman and Justice League had their creative team stick around for pretty much the entire run. Jeff Johns was the writer of Justice League all the way up till issue 50 and had a rotating cast of artists like Jim Lee, Ivan Reis, and Jason Fabok. Meanwhile, with the exception of a filler issue here and there, Batman was done almost completely by Scott Snyder and Greg Capullo. Their run actually ended at issue 51, making issue 52 something of a second epilogue. I tried to get the variant covers that mirror the first issue, but I couldn't get that for all of them. You'll see, my comic shop is very weird with variants. Snyder and Capullo's Batman is often considered the best of the New 52 lineup. And if you ask me, I would put Johns' Justice League as a close second. Because he was a writer all the way up to issue 50, it kept the run pretty consistent. And much like how issue 51 of Batman was that team's going away party, issue 50 of Justice League was Johns' going away party. Well, issue 52 hasn't come out yet. Doesn't come out till the end of June. Funny how the first comic of the New 52 sees its last issue come out after everybody else's. Next we have The Flash, Green Lantern, Batgirl, and Wonder Woman. I want to talk about these books because they had two distinct creative teams. Once the launch creative team ended their run, another team came over and finished out the rest of the series. Now, for the most part, this was fine. Brian Bocello was the launch writer for The Flash, and he was eventually replaced by Van Jensen, who finished the run. And for the most part, Van Jensen pretty much kept things consistent with what Brian Bocello was doing. The art wasn't as good as Francis Manapul's was at launch, but, you know, nothing is. At launch, Green Lantern was of course written by Jeff Johns, part of his epic run. Art was done by Doug Mahnke. The book ended written by Robert Venditti and primarily drawn by Billy Tan. And it pretty much kept the whole Cosmic Odyssey going, even if, at the end, Hal Jordan looked like a space hobo. Perhaps the most dramatic change of all was Batgirl. It launched under writer Gail Simone and followed a traditional Bat Family style storytelling. Very dark, very serious, very violent. She was, of course, replaced on the book by Cameron Stewart, Brendan Fletcher, and Babs Tarr. And they took it in a wildly new direction. It was lighter and funnier and really more popular than ever before. And then there's Wonder Woman. After a critically acclaimed launch by writer Brian Azzarello and artist Cliff Chiang that would go on for several issues and be considered one of the best in the character's run, they were replaced by Meredith and David Finch, who pretty much ruined the series. It may sound like hyperbole, but it's really the most disappointing downward spiral of the DC New 52 if you ask me. The book was fun and exciting, and now it just became middling and kind of dull and, you know, indistinguishable from the rest of the lineup. Finally, we have these 6 titles, and if you ask me, these kind of became the also-rans of the New 52 launch survivors. All these titles, Green Arrow, Aquaman, Catwoman, Detective Comics, Superman, and Action Comics, all had multiple creative team shifts throughout their run. And while each series had its own bright spots, they never really found good solid footing. Green Arrow seemed to have had the most trouble. It started just kind of being there, then a really good story arc by Jeff Lemire and Andrea Sorrentino came along, and that was really good, critically acclaimed, very popular. Then they started to try and make it like the show, and we wound up with something that didn't live up to the heights of the Lemire run. The Superman books were probably the most frustrating to watch. They didn't launch very strong, and after going through creative teams left and right, it wasn't until Greg Pak and Jeff Johns respectively came along and really kicked the books into gear. And in the end, these books aren't even ending with the same Superman they started with. We're getting the pre-New 52 Superman now. Catwoman went through probably just as many, if not more, creative changes than Green Arrow did. And aside from a run by Genevieve Valentine in the middle of the series, the book as a whole just wasn't really that good. Although I should point out, this is the cover for issue 1, and this is the variant for issue 52. As you can see, the direction of this series changed pretty considerably by the end. Lastly, we have Detective Comics and Aquaman. Now, surprisingly, both these series started out really strong. And they had some good creative moments later on, like when Jeff Parker took over Aquaman, and when Francis Manapul and Brian Bocello took over Detective. But unfortunately, towards the end of the runs, things started to lose direction, and by the end, didn't really matter. In the end, these launch survivors, as I've affectionately come to call them, pretty much represent the New 52 in a nutshell. Titles can range from fun and exciting to kind of just there to downright convoluted, middling, and bad. Was it all worth it in the end? It's kind of hard to say. We're about to go headfirst into the next relaunch, so we won't really know the full effects of the New 52 for some time. Continuity isn't being reset, but a lot of the main ideas of the New 52 are being suppressed in favor of pre-Flashpoint classic style ideas. But I have to say, we did get some great comics out of this mess, and in the end, I think that's what matters the most. Anyway, that was just my little weird where are they now of the New 52 launch books. Talk to me down below or anywhere on the internet what you thought of the New 52, either as a whole or certain sections of it. What were some of your favorite launch books from September 2011, if you were even reading comics at the time? Of course, Wednesday night is Wulff Den Live, 9 Eastern, right here on YouTube. Come chat with us. If you can't, don't worry, archive version on Thursday. Also, audio format on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play. And as always, like if you like, subscribe if you really like, share this video with a friend. Thank you so much for watching. Next time, back on the couch. Christopher Priest, the creator of Quantum and Woody and writer of one of the best Black Panther stories, is going to be writing Deathstroke. Deathstroke is not a character I care about solo, and they've tried like 3 times since the New 52 to relaunch Deathstroke, and they all sucked. But now that Christopher Priest is writing it, I'm all in. And I think a lot of people get hung up on this issue, but rightfully so. They botched the Phoenix story, and it negatively affected the main story of the movie, which was the fight against the mutant cure. Which is a shame, because that story is really good. Hey, you guys remember Ty Lopez, the guy who was like, hey, this is my comic collection. You can have one just like it if you click the link and watch my videos, learn about knowledge. Whatever happened to him?